Did, did that really just happen? Did I really just spend precious minutes of my life slowly making this tank kill itself, only for it to kill me? Life's funny like that. Funny life. Oh, hey. Challenge the mountain lord here. So, this boss fight, eh? What else can I say? This tank puts up a pretty good challenge against a high schooler, but no time for games now. Let's take it down. Fun fact, did you know that this boss doesn't separate when you're the only member of the team? Would have been great if it did this from the beginning. Girmakala reflects all the damage back to the tank, and after God knows how long, it finally separates. We dodged the insta-kill this time and send the shadow back to where it came from, the depths of try-hard hell. We inform Ikutsuki about the existence of other Persona members, and now it's summer break. We're on our way back late from home when Fuka informs us there's a shadow on the bridge. We rush there and... Oh, hey there. Didn't expect to bump into you.
So, given this little predicament, how do you intend to partake?
It's not like I wanted to protect you or something. Alright, I'm low health. Okay, fine, you can protect me. A gun. How romantic. We then end the fight and he vows to repay the favor. It's not like I wanted to see you again or something. Oh my god, you're back! I can't believe you came back to see me. At least wear a shirt. They're staring at me, you know.
My coat is invisible to fools. In this country, almost 5,000 people die in car accidents every year. And yet, there is no outcry against the existence of cars. Why do you suppose that is? It is because we value our own convenience over the lives of others. So then, why should we give up the powers we were bestowed?
Dog, I regret falling in love with you. Get out of my sight. Much like our protag, Junpei also gets it on with a Strega member called Chidori. Don't do it, Junpei. I've been there before. Meanwhile, Akihiko meets Shinji again. This is also when one of the funniest lines I've heard in any Persona game is said.
Did you know animals can use personas too?
Wait, what'd you just say?
Hey Shinji, did you know animals can use Persona too? What? Impossible! Anyway, they mention an incident that happened 2 years ago that Ken overhears and has a revelation. We go back to Tartarus and once again, we're way over leveled. We make a beeline to the first gatekeeper boss of this exploration. Once again, poison plays a part in the fight. I overplay my hand a little, but a godlike dodge on the Bufula allows us to continue the fight. Flauros blocks the fire, and we end this boss fight. Okay, as much as I'm enjoying Flauros and kicking the absolute living crap out of the shadows, I think it's time we part with it. We make sure to inherit the crit increasing passives and put it on Shikioji. The second gatekeeper boss dies to a Theurgy and a pierce attack that Shikioji has. The third gatekeeper boss is an interesting one. It uses both stagnant air and Zeo moves to inflict shock on the player. I get shocked and now I know how it feels to get Herculean striked. The next attempt, I keep Shikioji equipped throughout the whole fight. I still get shocked, but the boss isn't able to hurt me with Herculean strike now thanks to Shikioji. After a couple normal attacks, it goes down. We then fuse out Shikioji for White Rider and start the Monad passage of this block. A series of dice enemies stand in our way. White Rider is able to deal with them all easily thanks to his crit passives. Arrow Rain and Null Fire help us finish this Monad passage. Before the 5th full moon boss, Junpei tries to put on a show and makes Chidori think he's the party leader. Chidori then kidnaps him with what sounds like a fishing net.
That voice.
The 5th full moon boss is at the club in Paulownia Mall. The Hermit is a legitimately tough boss that specializes in Zeo moves. After a few turns, it uses a charging move which you're supposed to stop by attacking it, but as you can see, there's no one to help me to do that, so it charges. Once it's fully charged, it goes for a variety of strong electric and strike moves. Luckily, I have Thought, a persona that can block electric moves. The problem is, it's weak to strike damage. Gigantic Fist in particular deals 400 damage. What doesn't kill you, leaves you at 6 HP. By the 3rd attempt of this boss, I managed to reach the 2nd phase of this boss where it charges once again. I'd argue that this part of the fight is the easiest. Once it fully charges, it always goes for Giga Spark, followed by Swift Strike, and then Giga Spark again. It'll lose its charge and the whole process starts over again. Blocking after the first Giga Spark helps in not getting knocked down with Thought equipped. This way, we slowly reduce the boss's HP to less than a third when... Oh no. Sir, whatever you're doing, I'ma need you to stop. Yep, this boss has a 3rd phase. I didn't want to restart this fight all over again, so I just guarded during this entire phase, afraid of being crit by the Swift Strike. I then noticed that my Theurgy charges by a metric ton by nullifying damage. After 3 Theurgies, we defeat the boss. We then find Junpei and Chidori on the roof of the dorm, who's disappointed that Junpei couldn't call up the operation. Junpei tackles her and she gets hospitalized. Junpei starts to get attached to her and even calls her very cute. She requires suppressants to control her persona, which Shinjiro gives. Akihiko is well aware of the side effects and confronts Shinji about it. We also come to know that the reason he tries to become stronger is related to his past, where he lost his sister in an orphanage fire.
Back then, I wasn't strong enough to get past the adults holding me back to even try.
Meanwhile, Ken seems to be planning something and tells us to keep his belongings in case something happens to him.
I don't make it back here in the future, and this little guy will be all alone, so...
It hurts seeing a kid prepare for his death. I love this game. Speaking of which, arguably, the best addition to this game's story is Shinjiro's linked episode, where we try to convince him to attend school once again. It manages to paint a much clearer picture on why he refuses to move on in his life. We find out that it's related to something that he can't forgive himself for in the past, and it seems to be related with Akihiko and Mitsuru. Sadly, we're unsuccessful in our efforts, but at least we get another funny interaction from our 2 boys.
Well, I'll be damned. For a protein-fueled, muscle-bound moron, you're pretty smart. What was that?
We proceed on to Tartarus to take on the new block, Tzia. Before we do that, we fuse our Gurmakala and Thought for Rangda. We reach the boss room, and it's endurance run time. The first gatekeeper boss is taken care of with Arrow Rain and Counter Strike. The second gatekeeper boss has an interesting gimmick. It's able to take multiple actions in one turn. While this looks like it spells trouble, the moves it uses are the same every time it loads bullets. 3 bullets means buffs, 2 bullets means a Vile Assault and Charge, and 1 bullet means Heat Wave. Rangda, Reflex Strike, so Heat Wave damages the tank only. Seems I have a specialty for making tanks kill themselves. While the third Gatekeeper boss wasn't much of a problem, the fourth Gatekeeper boss is just crazy. No matter what, you will get distressed by the Black Hand. The funny part is, since Rangda Reflex Strike, which is what the enemies attack with, you can't remove the distress ailment by guarding and letting them hit you. Well, I guess it isn't much of a problem since the enemies take care of themselves. I put it on rush and we end the fight.
No shadows detected.
The fifth and final Gatekeeper boss of this Tartarus exploration uses magic Oni, so it's taken care of with Black Frost.
That's a win for the team.
With that, we move on to Monad. The first Monad boss uses poison, so we make use of null poison and deal with the boss. The second Monad boss on the other hand, oh boy, we've come full circle. Now I'm the one getting drained. We get real lucky with a dodge, which sets us on our way to victory. The third Monad boss likes to buff its attack and use Megidola the next turn. Guarding the turn after it buffs allows us to beat this boss. Before we leave Tartarus, I fuse Mada, a strong persona that can resist many affinities. It also learns Endure, which allows us to survive a fatal hit. In the Rail World, we give Mitsuru the extension of Absent Swarms Shinjiro handed to us. She tells us about how Seas was originally formed, and sincerely wishes that Shinjiro fulfills the promise that they all made together,
Graduate together. No one left behind.
and sadly
Since
remarks,
he left the team, he's acted like he's wanted to punish himself. It's almost like he just wants to waste away. I
"Okay,
know
fine,
he'll
you heard my
fulfill his
feelings.
promise.
Shinjiro, you're going back to school." Shinjiro reveals to us that he's not going to be alive much longer due to the suppressants, and that he needs to set things straight with whatever time he has left. He tells us he'll be handing the forms instead. With that, the day of the full moon is upon us.
Iwatodai Station Plaza.
This time, there are two boss shadows at Iwatodai Station. Strangely, both Ken and Shinjiro are missing. Junpei is asked to search for Ken in his room, to which he funnily replies,
He wasn't in his room, so who knows?
"Dude, he's a literal child. Why do you sound so unconcerned?" What's more concerning than Junpei's nonchalance about a child that's lost past midnight? A boss that you can't hit until you beat the other boss. Soon after the first turn, the Fortune boss uses his unique move called the Wheel of Fortune. As the name implies, wherever the roulette lands on grants either buffs or debuffs for both teams. It's even possible for the roulette to land on damage. Once it lands on 300 damage, which would have killed me had I not had the endurability on Mada, saved by the skin of my teeth. Keeping my HP above 300 was now my priority. In terms of what the boss can damage me with, well, they can't, cause Mada can block wind damage and for some reason is able to evade most of their attacks. Weirdly enough, after some turns, the Fortune boss just refuses to go for Wheel of Fortune anymore, making me think that they're more scripted events than actual moves the boss uses. After some Maragidines, the Strength boss goes down, which allows us to start bashing up the Fortune boss. Compared to the Strength boss we just defeated, the Fortune boss is absolute paperweight and can't even hit us. We use a Theurgy after charging up magic damage, dealing 1600 plus damage. Wow. Decorabia, finish this irrelevant boss. What? How did I not kill him? The game's playing by its own rules now. I'm gonna be so pissed if this kills me. Well, okay, thanks for wasting my time, I guess. We finally finish this boss fight. After the fight, Akihiko finally realizes why Ken and Shinjiro are missing and runs off. We find out that October 4th is the day Ken's mother died in an accident. But what really happened was Shinjiro lost control of his persona and killed her. All this time, Ken was on a quest for revenge and vows to kill Shinjiro. Until...
These are not his sins to bear. That is the nature of revenge. Is it not?
this cheesy dude comes to the scene and demands to know who the navigator in our team is.
Is there not?
Ken learns that Shinjiro was going to die regardless and loses all of his purpose to live. In a vulnerable moment, Ken sets himself up as the fall guy and says he's the navigator.
The only reason they let me do it.
Right before he's about to be killed, Shinjiro protects him and dies. The next day at school, a memorial is held for Shinjiro. Akihiko walks right up and starts talking to him, lamenting how he couldn't protect him even with all the training he did. In the end, he was too caught up in trying to protect others that he forgot to spend time with them. This scene always cheers me up, and I like to think it serves as a reminder to the player about what really matters in life. Being around the people you love while they're still around. They're more important than anything you could wish for. The team collectively tries to come to a decision regarding Ken, but it seems that he's missing. Ken, while at the place where Shinjiro died, confronts his fear of being alone and resolves to stop letting hatred control his life. He decides to continue fighting alongside us to eliminate the Dark Hour.
Done running away. Was in here.
We also have an ending for Shinjiro's linked episode, which reveals that he went back on his word and wanted to get back to school. Mitsuru takes this as a sign that he was thinking about them and their promise. It seems it's the season of resolutions, as Fuka, who was insecure about always needing to please people, realizes that it's a strength of hers that allows her to connect with others.
I want us to try.
Yukari and Mitsuru have a chat in the student council room where Yukari asks her about what her purpose of fighting is. Mitsuru intends to correct the wrongdoings in her family's past. Yukari, since learning about what her father did, has no good reason for fighting except defeating shadows. My purpose for fighting shadows? Why, of course, it's for you to subscribe, like, share, and comment if you enjoy the content and want to see more videos like this. It helps the channel a lot. Thanks. Back in Tartarus, we're just as overleveled, if not more so than before. So of course, the only logical decision is to fuse my good personas away. We fused White Rider and Black Frost for Mott. I gave it crit passives even though it didn't have any physical moves. The first Gatekeeper boss stands in our way. Without White Rider and Black Frost, the fight is definitely harder. It takes some time, but Dekarabia defeats the other enemies, leaving the Tower of Faces. With Mada equipped, we take care of it. The second Gatekeeper boss is not much of a problem. Mada, with Charge and Deathbound, is able to defeat this boss.
Good job, everyone.
After this boss fight, I go to the Velvet Room and fuse Siegfried, giving it as many crit passives as I can. Fusing Siegfried also gives us access to probably the most broken theurgy in the game, Scarlet Havoc, which deals severe slash damage to an enemy. Just to demonstrate, we have two knights who have volunteered to show the effectiveness of this theurgy. Remember, they're both at full HP. After charging up the previous turn, let's unleash our theurgy.
That about does it. All right. No shadows detected.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, those knights were the third Gatekeeper boss. I think you get the idea now. We fuse a bunch of personas after this fight. The one worth mentioning is Trumpeter, a great persona that can resist both dark and light damage and learns Debilitate, a move which debuffs the enemy fully. Another endurance run of bosses awaits us. This time, I'll try and not use Scarlet Havoc. After 3 Deathbounds, we eliminated 2 snakes. The Sword Hand blocks Slash, though it's weak to light. This was probably the first time I've used an insta-kill move which allows us to defeat the 4th Gatekeeper boss. The 5th Gatekeeper boss is the return of the Hogan. Siegfried on charge and attack buffs is dealing over 900 damage with Brave Blade. This is an insane amount of damage. We repeat this strat and the boss is soon defeated. The first Monad boss is a Minotaur that tries to inflict rage and can reflect physical attacks, which means you'll be damaging yourself if you get raged. Luckily, Mara has null rage, so this boss is taken care of. The next Monad boss are 2 castles that specialize in insta-kill moves. Hama gets me once, leaving me on 1 HP thanks to Mara's Endure. It Hamas me again, and this time my armor, which has an Endure perk, allows me to survive yet again. I use Trumpeter and his Mudun and Hamaun skills defeat the boss. The third and final Monad boss is a bit of a throwback, or in my case, PTSD. If you remember from my first video, we faced a Relic and a Knight as Gatekeeper bosses. Now they're working together here to stop me. What they don't realize is my impulsive response to never see them again. Before we leave Tartarus, we fuse Norn, another great persona with a high magic stat that specializes in wind. The day has finally come. The final full moon boss has been spotted at Moonlight Bridge. We are at the precipice of greatness. The power to destroy the abominable Darkar is in our very hands. The trials and tribulations we've been put through as a team has been immense. I mean, you guys did die under my watch a handful. Okay, maybe a couple more times than that, but let's not distract ourselves from the mission. Alright, my weakest teammates, walk with me. Do you guys have to be everywhere now? Before we can take on the full moon boss, we need to defeat Strega. Oh, I'm gonna take my sweet time ripping you guys apart. Okay. I know for a fact that that isn't 3000 damage worth of HP. Turns out that this boss fight has a checkpoint for the HP. The moment you hit that checkpoint, they speak their dialogue, and then, and only then, can you deplete the HP further. In other words, the game just stole away 3000 damage just like that. My pride hurts admitting it, but I lost to them a lot of times. These guys will target your weakness more often than not. Jin is able to buff Takaya and inflict ailments through his grenades. Takaya, on the other hand, just goes manic and spams all sorts of magic moves and will try to crit you if you have an ailment. This is by far the hardest fight we've had to deal with. After learning all I could from the fight, it was time to go back to the drawing board. I realized it was important to have Null Confuse and a persona that didn't have any targetable weaknesses. I buy the Null Confuse accessory and decided that Norn is the persona that I should use for this fight. I gave it Resist Electricity, Evade Dark, and Resist Pierce. Beginning the fight with Charge is important as they always start with Heat Riser followed by Maya, which Mada is immune to. The Charge will help me deal a ton of damage with the Scarlet Havoc Theurgy, but before I can use that, it's important to also knock their health down till they speak their dialogue. To reduce their health, I use Panther Ray, which deals a good amount of damage with attack buffs. I decided to target Jin first since his grenades and support abilities are more important than whatever Takaya is doing. He says his dialogue, I use my Theurgy, one more Panther Ray, and he's done.
Looks like this is it. Jin, you are going to pay for that.
The problem is, as soon as Jin goes down, Takaya starts using Megiddola, which requires me to heal more often. I get my Theurgy and decide to use Best Friends instead of Scarlet Havoc, a crime in any other playthrough, but I decided it was the better choice here. Best Friends doubles both your next magic and physical attack. After the Panther Ray, he speaks his final dialogue, and after a couple more turns, this boss fight is toast.
This can't be.
We learn that they didn't naturally awaken to their personas and were basically experiments. One can only assume they're talking about the Kirijo group's experiments. They then escape by jumping off the bridge. We are able to now face the final full moon boss. Except, we can't face the main boss until we defeat these statues. They're not difficult to get past as they all have a weakness. The main boss comes down and we're able to fight him now. Similar to the previous boss fight, this fight also has checkpoints where after you reach a certain level of HP, it goes back up and you need to defeat the statues, it spawns again. The second time it falls down is when the fight gets hard. The boss uses his unique move called Grim Transcendence, which allows it to take multiple turns. What move does it use after this? Why, of course, God's Hand, one of the most damaging strike moves in the game. That's of course ignoring the other variety of moves he uses like Megidola and magic reflecting shields. If you're lucky enough to survive this part of the fight, you'll spawn yet another statue that spams Megidola and is resistant to all types of attacks. And if you defeat this statue, you're just a few more turns away from ending the boss fight. But don't get excited, cause this is when it gets even harder. The boss finally reveals its trump card, Provoke. Up to this point, it has never put up a physical reflecting shield. No better time than now, I guess. We never recover in time, and the Megalodon vaporizes us. Unfortunately, this was yet another point where I had to admit I had no chance of defeating this boss without having some form of rage resisting moves or items. I had to swallow the bitter pill of reloading all the way back again to buy a null rage accessory. Prior to this attempt, I was using my theurgy on the statues. This time, I decided to use it on the main boss instead. After charging and using Scarlet Havoc, it immediately goes back up and spawns the next set of statues. Siegfried blocks most of their attacks. The second time it comes down is when it starts using strike moves more. I use Bishamonten, a persona that can block strike from this point in the fight. Primal Force, a move that deals severe pierce damage, is able to send this boss fight to the final phase. Having Null Rage makes this part of the fight much easier. Apart from Virus Breath and physical reflecting shields, this boss can't lay a finger on me anymore. With one last Primal Force, we're finally able to defeat the hardest two set of bosses we've come across so far. Most importantly, we've eliminated the Dark Hour.
1, 2, 3. Let's eat.
I'm gonna miss the Dark Hour. Yeah, right. All it's brought is suffering and death. Suck it, Dark Hour, I won. Pharaohs also finally remembers his purpose and bids us farewell. We celebrate the end of the Dark Hour until... Ikutsuki! Explain yourself! Ikutsuki tells us defeating the full moon shadows did the opposite of saving the world. Instead, he'll bring the end of the world, and in the new world, he'll be the new ruler. I guess under his control, restrains us and... Oh, wow, this is heavy. We are just about to be sacrificed when Mitsuru's dad saves us but gets shot and dies. Ikutsuki falls to his death, unable to bring his plans to fruition. Mitsuru mourns the loss of her dad. Yukari also finds out the real truth about her dad, who released the shadows to save the world and instructs not to hunt the shadows. Turns out Ikutsuki doctored the video to manipulate her. Man, never trust an Ikutsuki. Meanwhile, Chidori tells Junpei never to see her again, as he only brings pain to her. At school, we get a new classmate, Ryoji, who looks a lot like Phyros. We get acquainted with him at school and at our school trip in Kyoto. This is also where Mitsuru finds new purpose in fighting the shadows till the very end. Strega is finally able to release Chidori, and she's seen outside Tartarus the next day. We're forced to beat up Chidori in a scripted fight. Junpei tries to help Chidori as she's conflicted on what to do. From the shadows emerges Takaya and Junpei dies. Until he's revived by Chidori and tells
Be
him
with you, Junpei. Forever.
as soon as he gets up though, she's at death's door.
This might be all I ever needed.
Is my heart supposed to hurt, guys? Junpei then goes Super Saiyan on Takaya and Strega escape the scene. We make our way to Tartarus to explore the new block. Honestly, this block looks more like a rave party than Tartarus. The gatekeeper bosses we're encountering at this point do not give much of a challenge now. The personas I have at this point of the game are all way too strong and just stomp through Tartarus like it's nothing. I guess it helps having a theurgy ready before the battle every time. I mean, I guess you could say the Monad bosses did give me a bit of trouble, but after figuring out the gimmicks, it wasn't hard. I decide to fuse out some of my strong personas away like Mara and Norn for Otavaka and Uriel. It's also time to say goodbye to Siegfried as we fuse Abaddon, inheriting the crit passes. Back in the rail world, Aegis vows to protect us against Ryoji, who she considers an enemy. Though she wants to serve her purpose as a weapon, she's afraid of losing us too. On the day of the full moon, Ryoji finds himself on the bridge where Aegis confronts him and refreshes his memory on who he is. Ryoji, also known as Death, was an incomplete shadow that Aegis was trying to defeat, but was far too strong. Having no choice, Aegis sealed Death in.
Under the circumstances, there was only one suitable vessel. A human boy who had the misfortune of being nearby.
Yes, us. We've been led by Death this entire time to reunite his shadows. Ryoji tells us he's the appriser, who will bring the maternal being. The being's name?
Being is called Nyx.
Mom? Then Ryoji delivers a bombshell. All life will perish. And there's no way to stop or defeat Nyx. Ryoji then gives us a choice. We can either face Nyx in a losing battle, or we can kill Ryoji and forget all recollections of the Dark Hour, living peacefully in ignorance till Nyx arrives. What do you do when given a difficult life choice? Win it out on Shadows in Tartarus. This is for giving us an impossible decision, and this one's for staying inside me without my consent. Speaking about consent, do these personas even have any say about their existence? Are they just our toys to be used, only for a new one to come along? I'll let you guys answer that as I fuse Vishnu and Shiva. These two personas learn one of the best passes in the game, Ali Dance, greatly increasing evasion against attacks. As for Abaddon, he makes way for Beelzebub. All the crit passes go to him, which is a bit useless as Beelzebub is not a persona that has a high strength stat. The only bosses worth mentioning now are the Monad bosses, which are starting to get slightly annoying. The book spams Megidolan after some turns and it never stops. Doesn't help that it has a million HP, at least that's what it feels like. The second Monad boss is just ridiculous. 5 hand enemies on the screen and one of them... You already know how much I hate getting charmed. I retried the fight again with resist charm and it doesn't work. Should have learned from the previous episode, I guess. They also hit for a truckload of damage. I feel bad using Scarlet Havoc sometimes, but this is not one of those times. Back in the rail world, everyone in the group is now united on what they want to do. they want to fight, or rather, they've decided for me to fight Nyx alone. Come on guys, don't I have a say in this? Ryoji meets us on New Year's Eve and we tell him it's time to solo the final boss, thus beginning the final arc of the game. It's also the final time we get to spend time with our team members. Koromaru wishes to go with us after all of this is over. Why does this game hurt me so? We are finally at the final few stretches of Tartarus. I can't believe it, but we're finally there. We can't forget what this means though. The final gatekeepers of Tartarus are now ripe for the picking. The first gatekeeper boss uses light damage and can fully heal himself. Neat. The heals are also something you should expect in the coming battles. Charging and using God's Hand is enough for overcoming this first gatekeeper boss. The second gatekeeper boss is really easy. It seems to have the ability to recall its minions, but before I allow that, I end it with Akasha Arts. The third gatekeeper boss is similar to the first gatekeeper boss. Charging and Akasha Arts puts a sizable dent in their HP, and you know what the deal is. Scarlet Havoc, baby. After this fight, I already had Satan, so fusing Hellel gives us the final missing piece of the theurgy, which is practically a get me out of this battle button. What it does is that it deals 9,999 damage. That's able to kill 99% of enemies you face in this game. The caveat is using the theurgy leaves you with 1 HP and 1 SP, which isn't a problem at this point in the game, as you should have enough heals for both stats. The fourth gatekeeper boss poisons you, but now I have an insta heal accessory equipped, so ailments get healed as soon as it's my turn. A Pralaya followed by a Scarlet Havoc finishes this boss fight. The fifth gatekeeper boss likes to use Warple Blade a lot, and he does crit me sometimes with it. Megidoloan on Concentrate does some pathetic damage. Just go for Scarlet Havoc, it makes your life easier. After this though is probably the hardest set of gatekeeper bosses you'll ever face, and it's 3 gatekeeper bosses back to back. They really saved up the best for last. Time to lock in. First up, the Cultist of Death. He does follow the word of his cult well. The second boss to face us, 2 hedonistic sinners. Oh, you think you can paralyze me with shock? Psych, fool! Asura, show him what's up. And now, the final gatekeeper boss offers himself up to the challenge. Shiva's Pralaya is the way to go for this boss fight. You might think I'm crazy for not healing, but Shiva has a neat little passive called Enduring Soul. What does it do, you might ask? Oh, it only heals you fully after taking a fatal hit. One more Pralaya, and that's the end of all gatekeeper bosses, all done solo. I should clap for myself, putting up with all the misery these bosses have made me go through. But it's not over just yet. The doors of Monad just sit there, menacingly, yet inviting the deepest depths of my challenge adult brain. Let's dive right in. The first Monad boss is the Hallowed Turret. Similar to the previous gatekeeper fight with the tank, this one loads bullets and takes multiple turns. 2 bullets means a Maegal and a Makugal. 3 bullets means buffs. And 4 bullets means a barrage of attacks. It's also got a ton of HP, and a Scarlet Havoc that doesn't crit isn't able to defeat it. Thankfully, the Pralaya crits and we make our way to the second boss, which is probably the Monad boss a lot of people got stuck on. I would know cause I struggled terribly against them in my first playthrough of the game. The 4 samurai stand in our way. I remember this being way harder than this. Weird. This boss fight is easily taken care of. The third and final Monad boss is hard not cause of damage, but cause it heals 300 HP every single turn. The fact that I can only hit once means I have to hit more than 300 to bring his HP down. To make matters worse, it fully heals itself after reducing its HP significantly. Well, I'm afraid you've just paved your way to Armageddon Town. That has to be the end of all the bosses in Tartarus, right? But wait, there's more! The Reaper is a special enemy that will appear only if you happen to stay at the floor for too long. He's a seriously hard enemy to beat even with teammates. Before taking him on, I thought it wise to fuse Messiah. This persona is pretty much resistant to all forms of attack, which makes him a good persona to use against the Reaper, who will use every move in the game. It's a good idea to start a fight with a full theurgy bar and a shuffle time card that doubles your first attack. You could simplify this fight by using Armageddon, but I wanted to see if it's possible to defeat it without using that theurgy. If you're able to withstand the first 3 turns where he damages you the most, the Reaper starts to use a damaging move, then follow it up with inflicting an ailment. And he never breaks this pattern of moves ever. Using a persona that can block or resist most if not all of the moves in the game and instant healing from ailments is, I feel, necessary if you're fighting the Reaper solo. It takes a really long time, but with the help of Messiah, the Reaper is dead meat. Okay, now we can say for certain that has to be all the bosses in Tartarus. Back in the rail world, we have a pleasant surprise. Chidori comes back to life, but has no memories of Junpei or personas. In other words, she's lost the potential. But that doesn't stop Junpei from being the happiest man alive. You deserve it, Junpei. Aegis meets us at the rooftop and asks us to take her to fight Nyx. Yeah, sure, Aegis, why not? Is that a friggin' Persona 3 reference? Why are we back in Tartarus again, you might ask? I might have lied a little when I said that's all the bosses. You see, there's yet another boss in Tartarus that hasn't tasted defeat just yet. The reward for beating the Reaper is that you get to fight Elizabeth, your Velvet Room attendant. What do I think of this fight? I think whoever designed this fight deserves a special place in Tartarus. First of all, if you haven't maxed out the Star Social Link, there's no way of beating Elizabeth as you need Hellel and the Armageddon theurgy that comes with it. Secondly, have a look at what happens if you null, repel, or drain her attacks. She'll show you her Megidolon. Not hot. The only personas you can use are personas that resist damage only. Thirdly, she has 3 phases. The first phase is somewhat straightforward. She'll use Cert, Jack Frost, Thor, Cuchulainn, Metatron, Alice, Nebiros, and Masticado. The cycle repeats after that. To move to the next phase, you must bring her HP down from 20,000 to 13,000. In other words, 7,000 damage needs to be dealt. If you don't prep your personas to deal high damage, you'll never be able to deal 7,000 damage before 50 turns, which is also when she'll just straight up use Megidolon. If you're lucky enough to reach the second phase before 50 turns with under-prepped personas, she'll go for a planned Megidolon. The only way you can tank this is you have an Endure or Enduring Soul on your equipped persona. Don't have either? Enjoy the Megidolon then. The second phase is when you're supposed to deal 3,000 damage in 3 turns. If you can't, she'll Megidolon you forever. I'm saying Megidolon a lot, aren't I? The third and final phase is probably the hardest phase of the entire fight. It's similar to her first phase except she mixes and matches the persona she uses. Remember how in the first phase she'd use Cert for her first turn and only Cert? Well, in her third phase she'll use Cert and then Jack Frost. Unlike the first phase where she sticks to the cycle of personas strictly, she can revert back to the first set of personas in her cycle at any time during this phase. I don't have footage of it, but if you're able to damage her for a total of 10,000 damage, she'll go for another Megidolon, which you need another persona that has Endure, and you also need a theurgy ready to use Armageddon to end the fight. Wow. Alright, now, to beat Elizabeth requires more prep than any other fight in the game. Before going to Tartarus, you're gonna want to go to the antique shop and purchase Lucifer's blade and the armor of light, and incenses to easily increase your persona stats. Then go to the club and increase theurgy regenerates. For the personas, you're gonna want a persona that can deal a ton of damage with theurgy. My Hellel is tuned for ice damage so that the King and I theurgy hits extra hard on the first turn. You'll also want another persona that can damage her with non-theurgy moves, as you'll need a theurgy to end the fight. Odin with Thunder Rain and electric buffs will help you get there once she has Ku Colin equipped. After dealing a sufficient amount of damage with King and I and Chiyu's Akasha Arts, I reached close to around 6500 damage. I kept myself buffed and Elizabeth debuffed till she pulls out Ku Colin. Odin with Thunder Rain is able to deal about 2500 damage, which puts the total amount of damage to around 9000. She then moves to the second phase. Now, here comes the neat part. You can skip the third phase of the fight through a clever workaround. After eating the Megadolon, debuffing her defense only and switching to a persona that repels strike and has endure is important. The following turn, she uses Thor and hits herself for 1000 damage. Putting the total amount of damage will be on the 10,000 mark, enough to kill her with Armageddon. Since we broke an important rule of the fight by repelling damage, she won't move to the next phase and instead uses Megadolon, but we're able to endure it. With our theurgy ready, we can finally put an end to one of the most obnoxious boss fights out there, and stop saying Megadolon as well. The reward for the fight is... yeah. If you wanted game journalist difficulty, you can use this. And with that, the end of the game is upon us. Before we make our way to the top of Tartarus, the group realizes that everyone's memories will be lost after the battle, but still make the promise of meeting on graduation day on the school rooftop. We make our way to the top of Tartarus, where Nyx shall descend. However, this guy again. Jin stands in our way.
Hide your weaknesses from me. Come on, let's see your weakness. The hell? You covered up all your weaknesses? Cowards. Can't even handle getting knocked down.
Yeah, that's the point. Jin spams grenades non-stop, but our personas are so overpowered from the Elizabeth fight that these grenades might as well be tickling us. We reach the second phase of this fight, where he finally reveals his trump card.
This. Now you see what I can really do. Here's a special treat just for you.
Grenades, but the EX version. What is this, Street Fighter? These grenades are way deadlier than the previous grenades. They'll always deal 200 damage, which is annoying as they'll have to heal every 3 grenades. But you wanna know what's more annoying than that?
Here's a special treat just for you.
You have to hear this voice line repeated every
Here's a special treat just
single
for you.
turn of his. Here's a special treat just for you. How's that for payback, you son of a... Whoa, calm down, young man. I guess shield Ken's eyes. This phase is actually easier than the previous phase. Even though he hits way harder and can use his EX grenades, Jin loses a ton of HP every turn. Just tanking the hits will leave him at 1 HP for one last hit to end this boss fight. Jin then reveals that the Kiriju group experimented on Strega when they were orphans, with the intention of investigating Tartarus. There's no time left though, as shadows spawn out of thin air, and Jin uses one final Megadolon on the shadows.
Hey, you hear that? Don't tell me.
And himself. We will reach the top of the tower, and Takaya is there to stop us. Takaya, I can sympathize with you. you didn't deserve the kind of start to life that you got. But that doesn't mean that you take my pride, take my dignity, but take away my SP and you just made an enemy for life. The third phase is when Takaya starts hitting hard. I'm surprised personas with 99 endurance still take a significant amount of damage from Megiddola. After every almighty move, he follows it up with an ailment inflicting move, but we null all ailments with the help of Amaretite Necklace. Consistently following the Concentrate, Debilitate and Heat Riser set of moves deals a ton of damage to Takaya, putting him in his final phase. Takaya finally uses his evoker and unleashes his theurgy, which did absolutely nothing. But Fuka thinks it did something. She's supportive of people that way. One more King and Knight theurgy and he's done. With no one left to stop us, the moment we've all been waiting for is here.
Come on, everyone. Let's band together and win this. I know we can do it.
The final boss of the game, Nyx's avatar, stands before us. His first phase is laughing at us. Wow, who knew the most damaging move in the game targets us, the player? One concentrated Morning Star sends us to the second phase, where he will drop some wisdom and change his Arcana to the Magician, gaining fire resistance and fire moves. After you manage to defeat this phase, he'll shift to the Priestess Arcana, which is also when you'll notice the pattern. Each Arcana he shifts to is that full moon boss's specialty. The first full moon boss was of the Priestess Arcana and could use Ice Storm, and here we have Nyx of the Priestess Arcana using Ice Storm. Still, I wouldn't say this fight is hard just yet. The next Arcana, Empress, is also defeated easily. It's when he shifts to the Emperor Arcana. The moment you see Nyx grease that sword like some Elden Ring character is when you should get very scared. Nyx's move, Sweep, has a high crit chance, which he follows up with Sunder. I could have very easily died right here. As Nyx switches his Arcana, we reminisce on the full moon bosses. The Lover's Arcana. Okay, you pissed me off for making me remember that, Nyx. Once you get past the Strength Arcana though, is when he switches to the Hanged Man Arcana. Remember what made the Hanged Man unique? More actions on one turn. We get so close to dying once again if it wasn't for the lucky dodge on the second God's hand. At this point, I was really starting to feel the pressure. The fact that he could use Sweep and crit me exactly like that was a scary prospect. I was starting to hesitate on when to change to Hellel for massive damage. It was a much better option to use Messiah now. Though not as overpowered as Hellel, at least he can nullify physical moves and prevent the crits. Chiyu, when guarding, can deal with the concentrated Megiddolan quite well. A King and Knight Theurgy and a Megiddolan sends him to the Death Arcana, his final phase. This is when we get to see Nyx's unique moves. Apocalypse, which does so much damage, I'm barely left breathing at 6 HP. Nyx's other unique move is Night Queen, which deals 300 plus damage. Wow, could it get any worse? Yes it can. In addition to this, he can use any move from the previous Arcanas. Nyx goes for another Apocalypse and once again I'm left with 7 HP. That's when I realized something. The Armageddon move is actually supposed to leave you at extremely low HP no matter what your HP is. His other move, Night Queen, is different that way as it actually deals damage. After Fuka charges me, it's much easier to deal more than 100 damage on a Megiddolan and a charged Scarlet Havoc deals 900 damage. Not bad at all. The reason I'm not charging with my personas cause I'm friggin' scared as hell. Look at him. What is this cosmic horror on my screen? Trust me, the moment I switch away from Hillel, he crits me and I die. That's just how my luck is. Also, I'm well into 40 minutes into this fight, and there's no way in hell I'm dying right now after going through all those phases. Which is why the best friend's theurgy is my best friend at the moment. This allows me to charge without changing personas. The Megadolon and Scarlet Havoc put him well beyond the halfway mark now. We're almost there. As the fight went on, I realized that when he goes for a Heat Riser, it means he goes for Apocalypse the next turn. Nyx uses Night Queen and almost kills me. Fuka, as helpful as ever, doesn't heal me but charges me. We take those anyway and wait for the Heat Riser only to switch to Hillel and unleash a devastating theurgy dealing 2000 plus damage. Nyx doesn't take kindly to that and uses Apocalypse. 7 HP remains. We heal that, and Messiah, it's time to prove who's the better Nyx. But the fact doesn't change. Nyx cannot be defeated. Nyx goes to the moon and cracks it open like a Kinder Egg and brings it down to Earth. Under immense crushing force, we lose consciousness for a while when we get transported to the Velvet Room and attain the World Arcana, which gives us the ultimate responsibility. We know what must be done. We enter the moon and face Nyx himself. This is getting crazy. There are 3 Nyxes? With the power of friendship, we are able to withstand Nyx's attack known as death. I've just about had it with you damn imposters. Time to burn some bread. Our group stands in the galaxy, wondering where we are, until Ryoji tells them,
greatest question. It just happened a bit sooner than it will for the rest of you.
Tartarus disappears along with the Dark Hour, and good Nyx is back.
Oh, thank goodness!
Peace has finally been restored. On the 4th of March, we talked with our group members who seem to have forgotten everything about the Dark Hour and also mentioned that we look terrible. The next day, Aegis meets us in our room and tells us that she remembers everything. Today is graduation day. Remember the promise we made before fighting Nyx? It's time to fulfill that promise and meet everyone at the school rooftop. At school, Mitsuru gives her speech and finally remembers everything along with the group about the promise of meeting at the school rooftop. Aegis finally understands that the meaning to life doesn't have to be a great purpose. Simply having someone to take care of is enough to give our lives meaning. It's time to get some rest. We close our eyes for one final time. Our friends make it to the rooftop and Aegis smiles. And with that, we have successfully beaten Persona 3 Reload with our teammates on Merciless. As for my thoughts on the challenge, I'd say it was moderately difficult. The early game is definitely the hardest part of the entire challenge, and it gets easier by the 4th full moon boss. One thing I was surprised with is just how many times there was a persona that could nullify damage from the full moon boss. To me, it seems to definitely have been something the developers intended to make the game easier. This was a really fun challenge to do, and I'm itching to do more harder challenges in the future. I'll definitely be doing one with episode Aegis. Till then, I hope you enjoyed watching this 2-part challenge video on Persona 3 Reload. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.